Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the BGVP NS10. This is their latest flagship, and as the name implies, there's 10 drivers per side, 8 BAs, and a dual DD driver. Anyway, just gonna take you through the unboxing quickly. That's the box, the usual method of opening that they usually use. Brings this a little bit of paperwork here, how to use the IEM and so on, both in Chinese and in English. And then the IEMs came over there, as you can see. Just take this out. Okay, IEMs came over there. Over here was the cable, and then it brings a whole bunch of tips, which are more than adequate, and to try and find what works best for each one of us. Brings some foams as well. And it actually also brings some filters, although these filters, well, they don't really do anything, to be honest. I'm being as frank as possible. There is very little or no difference between them, both in terms of what you hear and perceive of hearing, and graphically you also don't see much. So I've just left it with the stock ones, which are silver, and yeah, that's it. So that's the box there for us. Let's just get it out of the way. Okay, show you here the actual carrying case, which is also a carrying case, which is the same. It's got the BGVP logo there, the same as the Melody. Okay, it brings a very nice cable, which I'll show to you in a second, with the modular setup, which has kind of become kind of the accepted standard for certain prices. Okay, as you can see, nice cable, 4-core, really nice quality, doesn't tangle, really nice. I mean, my congratulations to them in terms of the cable. Okay, let me just put this away here and start speaking a little bit more about them. Anyway, here we go. What about the IEMs themselves? All metal shell, as you can see. Okay, showing you around. It's got 3 vents in the back there. Okay, it uses a ducted system for all the components inside. It uses a RFA knolls for the treble. It uses a 23 series and some FTK series for the mids, and it uses 736, if I'm mistaken, for the ultra high frequency, 4 of those. So it's 8 BAs in total, and a dual diaphragm, graphene diaphragm actually, dynamic driver. So 10 drivers in total, which is quite an achievement, because when you actually see the size of the shell, it's not a huge shell. And just for the sake of comparison, here's the shell of, for example, the HIFIGO Mega 5P. Okay, and that's a 1+4, and you can see that, you know, the shell of the NS10 is actually pretty compact considering. Fit was fine in my particular case. I had no issues, although I will say that if you are able to fit it deep, you will see some improvement in terms of the sound, especially with regards to an area there of the sound, which is, well, it comes in their graph, and I graphed it as well, which is that 789K area. There's a bump there in the frequency response, which if you have the earphone outside, it can make itself a little bit more felt. If it's nicely jammed into your ear, then whatever resonances or whatever that peak can introduce are much attenuated, and you don't really notice it much. And that's really the only thing in the terms of the frequency that I would call negative. For the most part, everything sits pretty tight within a window of about 8 dBs, 7-8 dBs, which is not bad. So I don't really know what to consider this. To consider this a V-shaped, or to consider a warm. Excuse me, guys. A warm neutral. Can't really make up my mind. But anyway, I've used medium-sized wide bore BGVPs, as you can see, and yeah, it works very well with me. I'm able to put them nice and deep like I like into my ears, and really get the best out of what the NS10 can offer. What do I have here well, I wouldn't say compare, but to kind of set the stage for the NS10? Well, I've got the Performer 5, not because now it's the thing to have, no, because it is a OnePlus 4 that costs $219 and it plays well, period. I've got the Mega 5P, which is another OnePlus 4, which costs also around $219, $220, give or take, and it plays as well, awesome. I've got the previous model to the NS10, which is the NS9, which now can be bought for around $130 at HIFIGO. And I've got obviously the NS10, which can be bought for about $161, $162 if I'm mistaken, also at HIFIGO. So visit HIFIGO if you're looking for these two. They've got some good deals on this, and also of course for the Performer 5. How can I set the stage for the sound here of the NS10 without making things complicated and rambling too much? Compared to its NS9, it's a much more balanced out signature. The NS9 actually did not have a bad execution of the mids. Well, let's start with the pin again, and then that whole area of the mids and the upper mids and the presence. Everything was actually quite well done. There was really no peaks, no dips. Then it had a dip, and then it's an extension past 10K, fine. But in that first part of the graph, when you look at it, it's actually quite nice. And were it not for the tremendous amount of bass energy that there is with the NS9, it actually wouldn't be a bad sounding IM. And it's not that it is a bad sounding IM, it's just that it's dark. And it's dark not because it lacks treble, not because it lacks mids, no. It's just because it lacks those frequencies with relation to the dynamic driver, or to the dynamic driver's output rather. It's been very emphasized, and when I show you the graph of the two, you'll understand what I mean. I mean, this looks like a bass monster next to the NS10. So the NS10 and BGVP with the NS10 has taken a more grown-up approach. They've tried to do a signature which showcases the mids primarily, and that's where I think that the NS10 actually shines. The mids of the NS10 are quite good. They are quite good. Male and female voices are well executed. I would say that I prefer I prefer male voices. Female voices can on occasion sound a little bit on the edge. Okay, timbre and tonality is for the most part correct. Only with certain brass instruments that I find that it got a little bit not realistic. Okay, a little bit overemphasized in the way that the tonality was coming through. In terms of its technical abilities, so soundstage, imaging, and so on. Soundstage, I think, is probably the better of the better quality that it has. Imaging, yes, as long as the track isn't too complex. When the track gets a little bit complex, it can get a little bit complicated for it to actually show where everything is positioned. Okay, so you hear everything as one and not things being properly divided up like I would ideally like. One song that, for example, I like using for that particular characteristic. Sorry guys, this cough really doesn't really want to let go. Let me just load up here my playlist so I can tell you. The one song I like using for that is, for example, Sunrise from Larry Carlton, not the live version but the studio version. And with Sunrise, everything is very well divided, and it does it. But for example, if I compare it to the Mega 5P or the Performer 5, there's no comparison. These two are way ahead. So that's I would say that's the worst technicality that it has. In terms of detail retrieval, macro and micro details, pretty decent as well, not bad. Overall, as an IM compared to the NS9, substantially better. much better than the NS9. No comparison. The only attention to detail attention that I want to bring to you is the fact that it's got that peak, like I said, in the 6, 7, 8, 9K area there, which it's a pity. It's really the only part there where it's really a pity, because otherwise everything else is pretty well executed. It's a more of a mid bass. The peak of the bass is at 60 hertz, and then it drops off about a dB and a half by 20 hertz. So there's a smooth roll off towards the sub bass, but it's still capable of giving pretty decent rumble. The pinna gain, like I said, is a pinna gain of around 7 dBs, give or take. So it's a pretty decent pinna gain. It peaks at about roughly 2.9, almost 3K. That's where it peaks. So not bad as well there. Those main characteristics there have been pretty well executed. The only problem really is the secondary peak in the treble area. That secondary peak in the treble area, it's at 8K roughly, and thus that area that I was saying, the 6, 7, 8K there is a little bit boosted. I'm gonna assume that a part of that peak is coupler related, but part of it is also because of the way the tuning was done. Okay, so that's the only part that I really would say is a pity. Okay, and that's basically it. As compared to then the high senior, the Mega 5, and the Performer 5. Excuse me. When I first listened to it, actually, it reminded me a lot of the Mega 5, and I would say, in a kind of a nutshell, yes, the Mega 5 is superior because the Mega 5 is more neutral in the way that it presents everything. But for, I would say, 90% of the time, the sound that these two put out is quite similar. I was actually quite surprised. I was not expecting it. Am I saying, or by that, am I saying that this is a worthwhile alternative to the Mega 5P? It could be if you can't stretch yourself out to the Mega 5P's money. If your maximum is about 150, 160, and you're just dying to have a Mega Driver IEM, then yeah, this could be an alternative to the Mega 5P in the sense that it offers very much the same quality of sound that the Mega 5P offers, with just a few little details here and there that are not as polished. Okay. And one of those details is certain parts of the spectrum you notice the BA timbre, and where do you notice it? Definitely you notice it in that 6, 7, 8, 9K. You definitely notice the BAs there, very much. Is it bad? Is it offensive? No, it's not bad. It's not offensive, but you notice it. Something which in the Mega 5P, it's not. In the Mega 5P, you get an idea of everything being very coherent, and it's basically just one driver. Over here, no, you can understand there's multiple drivers at work. As compared to the 5P, to the P5, sorry, the Performer 5. No, it's an inferior IEM again, much like the Mega 5P. It's an inferior IEM. This has got substantially better everything. The sub bass, the mid bass, everything is very well done. Yeah, very clean, very textured. Over here, you, by comparison, although good and much better than the original NS9, you feel that there's a certain sluggishness to a certain extent. But on certain tracks, I have to say that the slam, the mid bass slam here, was better than over there. But that was just on very specific tracks. A track like what, for example? You may ask. Well, a track like, for example, Secret Garden from Damien Escobar. Another one, Sister from Rochelle Farrell. Another one, Swept Away from Carol Duboc. Those tracks, the mid bass slam here was better than on the Performer 5. Better in the sense that it was tighter, more energetic. It gave the song, for me at least, it gave it that that impact that I particularly like. Maybe other people won't like it like that, but particularly these songs, I like them with a little bit more guts. Okay, the mids on the Performer 5 are very, very good. That's probably one of its better areas, and the treble is very well executed. I mean, honestly, it's actually pretty amazing what a Fool has been able to do with the Performer 5 in terms of what they offer at the price that they offer. You know, I've heard some people already kind of not complaining, but bringing attention to some issues that occurred with regards to quality control and so on and so forth, which are issues that shouldn't happen, mind you. That's the truth. Those issues should not happen. But let me remind you that those issues happen with every IEM, and I myself have encountered that problem. And when I do encounter that problem, I do my very best to have it resolved, and I've always been lucky up to date to resolve those issues that I've encountered. Anyway, as a final wrap up for the NS10, do I recommend the NS10? I would say a cautious recommendation, in the sense that there's a lot of stuff at this price of $160, $170. I didn't compare it, for example, with any of the planars, and at this price you have the Wuzetian, you have also the Let's Shure S12 Pro. You know, I've tried to maintain it just with hybrids and compare it just with hybrids. As a alternative hybrid, definitely yes, it's a very good alternative to many options that are available. Do I, for example, prefer it over a favorite of mine, which is the AudioSense AQ4? I would say yes, in that it's more open in the sound than the AQ4. So compared to that, yes. But with comparison, for example, to the H30, the ISN H30, or the Panon, the Fan 2, which one would I prefer? I would probably take those two, because the coherence of the sound is more well done. It's more polished. This is, in my opinion, for a first attempt at a more mature tuning from BGVP, let's put it that way, I would say that this is a very well done set. And if this is the beginning of future improvements, then, you know, well done for sure. So as I say, yes, it's a set that I recommend. Listen to it if you have the opportunity, so that you don't, you know, jump the gun and then you regret it. Listen to it if you have the opportunity. Remember, deep fit will improve the overall sound, and that's it. I mean, it's a well packaged. It's got good accessories package. You know, nice cable, nice tips, casing. Everything is. They've done their homework here. They really have. I mean, both this one and the Melody, their single DD. There's really nothing that you can complain. Now it's just a question of improving this. That's basically it. Okay. Anyway, guys, I'll show you another graph quickly in a second, and as always, like, subscribe. Questions that you might have or anything, just please feel free to ask. Okay, take care. Hi guys, and welcome back to the graph section of the NS10. And as you can see straight away, this is the graph of the NS10. Everything maintains itself within a window of around 80, like the 8 dBs more or less that I was mentioning, apart from this peak here at 678K, which is coupler related and non-coupler related. It's in the tuning, and depending on the tip that you use, yes, you will notice it a little bit more or less. Bass is fine. I mean, there's a little bit of a roll off here, like one just over 1 dB, but not really noticeable. The rest of the bass is very smooth. It's very, in my opinion, very nicely done. Negligible amount of bleeding to the mids. I mean, it's really not. It actually adds to a little bit more substance. The peanut gain starts a little bit early, but nothing really that's offensive. Peaks at about 3K, as I mentioned. Maintains itself plateaus, get that peak there, and then a little bit of extension past 10K. And it sounds fine. It really, honestly, the NS10 really sounds fine. I think that one of the biggest problems that the NS10 will encounter is a market which is flooded with a lot of options below $200. And well, yeah, it just makes it difficult to choose. Anyway, compared to its older brother, which is the NS9, straight away you can see massive amounts of more bass in the NS9, but also a subsequent loss in terms of the quality of that bass. While the bass in the NS10 is clean, fast, detailed. On the NS9 it can be sluggish. Yes, on occasions on the NS10 it is also, but by comparison it's like honestly you have to hear the two to understand the difference. Is quite significant. In terms of the mids, it's fine. It's just this overdone area of the bass that overpowers the rest of the signature of the NS9, which makes it sound dark, and that's it. Compared to the Mega 5P, and that's the graph of the Mega 5P, you see a lot of similarities here in the way that the pinna gain is done and where it starts and how it's done and the execution of that whole area there. Even the the brilliance part. It's just this peak here which doesn't exist on the Mega 5, and then a little bit more sub bass there, a little bit less mid bass over here. And these are things which are noticeable. I've centered it all at 500 hertz. I've equalized all the graphs at 500 hertz. But the Mega 5P is obviously a more correct sounding IEM. Everything is done with more polish. Okay. Compared to the full, the Performer 5, a lot of similarities in the mid bass areas. You can see mid bass and mids, a lot of similarities up to about 2K, actually quite similar. More sub bass on the full, but you do notice, as I mentioned, that there's a little bit more. Although graphically you don't see it on certain songs, that you will notice that there's just a little bit more impact to that bass of the NS10, which is actually quite nice. It's if there's one, although the mids are, in my opinion, the best part of the NS10, that mid bass impact that it has is also pretty decent. Extension, although it seems like they're similar, no, the extension on their full is significantly better and cleaner, more detailed. It's a better, especially in the sense that you do not notice so much the B8 timbre that you will notice on the NS10. As for the peak that you see here on the full, this has to do with the tip that I'm using. If I actually use the stock tips, this is basically straight. I mean, I actually think I've got the graph here. Let me just see, and I'll show you guys. The only thing is I cannot use that tip on myself particularly, but that peak there, or that increase that you see there, honestly, it doesn't manifest itself in terms of audibly you picking it up on it. Where is it? There we go. Performer 5, stock tip. There we go. Okay, so see, with the stock tip, it kind of basically stays the same all the way. Just that this whole area comes down. So a much more linear graph, and perhaps one that's more similar to some of the graphs we've seen from other reviewers. Okay, as opposed to this. So there we go. All right. Anyway, guys, as I said in my review, NS10, it's not a bad IEM. It's an interesting IEM. A very commendable effort by BGVP. I mean, they've had other IEMs in the past that were obviously well tuned and were successful, but as of late, not really a lot of IEMs that have been coming from them which are kind of, let's say, truly success. But the NS10, I think, does shed a positive light on that return to some good tuning and some good sounding IEMs. And personally, I like the NS10. Like I said, check it out, listen to it, don't make any rash decisions upon it. And it's an alternative. It's an IEM which is an alternative. There's obviously other IEMs at this price that are also interesting. I mean, for example, I've got here this is the H30. This is the H30, as you can see from ISM. Very similar in terms of the bass, everything very similar. More correct sounding, definitely, yes. The H30 is way more correct sounding than the NS10, but it's basically what you are looking for. One thing is for sure. One thing I can definitely say for a IEM which is a radical departure from the NS9 that it substitutes. It is well done. It plays well, and it's no disgrace to BGVP. Guys, as always, like, subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask. All right, you take care. Have a good one. Bye bye.